officially, I think, the Thousand Oaks Drum Club with everybody here. And we should have the whole group. I'm thinking this is like a super spreader event of love, right? That's what we'll call it. Hey, look who's joined us.
Hi, Don.
JR here. How long since you've seen these guys?
Well, I mean, Curt and I sleep together, so.
Sorry I asked the question. I've got to tell you guys, I got a little heat after we did the first show from some of our favorite drummers and close friends saying, what about the Orange County drummers?
Oh.
Then,
well, no.
So there's going to be
illegal aliens, man.
So we've got 3 or 4 of them that are so I thought, well, that's really cool. We'll do that. And then the next day, sure as shit, I get an email. Hey, what about Texas? So we got several guys that have moved down into the Dallas, Texas area. So I think
now Texas is suing Orange County and Conejo Valley.
No, but I did speak for ourselves, and I shouldn't have done this without talking to everybody first. But I just said to the Orange County guys, okay, we'll have the drummers of Orange County. We have the club. You can have the drummers of Orange County, and we'll do this. But when we can, we've got to have a rivalry baseball game. The TO drummers against the Orange County drummers, right?
We'll get their ass kicked.
And everybody who thinks Thomas Lang is going to be a big asset, we got to work a little bit ahead of time, Thomas, because I've got videos of you playing baseball, which which will be good.
That would be fun, Don.
Yeah, well,
we may have to have some paramedics on the sidelines, but that's okay.
I'll just go ahead and say I'll be bartender.
Pull it off, yeah.
I think with 6'7" Gregg, Augustine, JR, and Doane, we should have a basketball team.
You know what? I would love to do that, and my lovely young age today says no.
Again, bartender.
Play it safe.
I'll go as a ref.
And Greg, why don't you introduce to everybody Gregg Augustine? You're a student, and we have somebody here who was born and raised in Thousand Oaks.
Yeah.
So the history of the city.
About a year ago, I was my son Noah and I went down to the Troubadour to hear this great band called Canal Street, and I met Gregg Augustine, the drummer in Canal Street. And I said, so where are you from? He says, Thousand Oaks. I said, where did you move from? He said, I didn't move from. I was born in Thousand Oaks, grew up in Thousand Oaks, and then we've gotten together and jammed several times. He's become a student of mine. And I said, this is really cool because we need a Thousand Oaks Drum Club member, born and raised in Thousand Oaks.
I'm not sure how much credibility I bring. I guess I've been here my whole life, but thank you for that. The introduction.
Like we kind of did last time, it is a hangout for everybody to see what you guys are doing and what's been going on. And we talked a little bit when we started this out a couple of weeks ago, asking questions about, what's life kind of like in the studio. Burleigh, where are you at, by the way? Looks like you got a whole lifetime's worth of things there.
Well, this is my studio / used to be a garage, but it's just it's a studio. Do a lot of percussion stuff, a lot of drum stuff. I keep waiting for Luis to come over, but he hardly ever comes anymore. So,
I'm sorry.
Hey, Burleigh.
There's a lot of traffic. I was trying to get over there.
Oh, I know. He's 2 blocks away, and he gets in traffic jams all the time coming over, and it's just
always.
JR, I'll come to you about what you've got there and what you're doing and how it is hunkering down and doing tracks, or what's life like.
I've been very blessed that I've been working more than ever. Unfortunately, maybe a lot of you don't know that I've had some health issues this whole year. This whole year has been really fucked up, and I can tell you guys now because I'm almost healed up. But I broke my leg in March. I'm not going to suggest how it happened, other than it was a 7-month heal. And at that same time, who's over 65? Actually, let's just say, who's had shingles?
Mildly.
I got hit so hard, you guys, it fried my L1 nerve. That's been a problem. And at the same time, I know you guys, don't feel sorry because I'm healed up good. I had a 3-inch cancer removed on my arm.
Oh, JR.
So it's all good because the groove is still there, and I'm very grateful. So other than that, I'm doing a lot of work, and I'm working on a solo record, and working on a new video company, and just to, like I see all you guys doing similar things, and I know Burleigh, you got the band going.
Let me ask JR, did you get the shingles shot and still get shingles, or did you not get the shot?
Once you get it, that comes from chickenpox when you guys are kids. And who had chickenpox? Everybody?
Yeah, great.
So the whole thing is, if you haven't gotten the shingles shot, get it. If you're like me, I don't need the shingles shot because I'm a carrier.
Yeah, but you didn't get it ahead of time. I mean, you didn't get it.
But I've gotten the pneumonia shot and the flu shot now. I don't know. It's a slow process, and the nerves coming back. So
no, all the best to you. I didn't know. I heard about it, but I didn't.
Kept everything under the table.
No, for sure.
Hey, we're on this side of the dirt, and we know, Papa Joe just left us, and lived a long life, and we all miss him terribly. So.
Burleigh, so what are you getting shots for nowadays, Burleigh?
I got that shingles and I got the flu shot, but I didn't, the pneumonia shot, that's kind of news to me. I didn't know that you were supposed to go.
There's a new one.
That's one I got recently also. Yeah, Mick Fleetwood mentioned that to me, and he got it, and he said that's something you got to get.
Yeah, I mean, some of you guys are younger, so I mean, I don't think some of you guys need it, but it's this is funny. We're not talking anything about music.
In a matter of speaking, Burleigh, what are you doing out of your place with tracks and things?
There's some Ambrosia stuff happening, so I'm doing a lot of that, and I've got some soundtrack stuff that's coming in, so I kind of simulating orchestral percussion, a lot of that, and just some drum tracks for people, and mixing, a lot of mixing. Yeah.
One of the themes that came up last time was that doing drum tracks at home, you're actually doing a lot more than you would have if you had just gone into the studio and done something, because of the idea of everybody wanting to have it perfected. It was an interesting theme that everybody kind of told.
I spent a lot of time at it basically because I get one bar in and can't stand when I played, so I have to do it over about 3,000 times. Yeah.
You're your own producer.
There's a lesson in there for young drummers, I think. You're all perfectionists, I think, right, Don?
Well, I think, you sort of, when you play drums, everything drummers tend to think in such fine subdivisions that we tend to be a lot more detail oriented about a lot of things. And that's, like to your point, we've all become better engineers by necessity, because I engineer my own stuff here. Probably most of us are engineering that. So now you write your parts. People might send you your parts from wherever. You're doing them remotely. You're writing them. You're producing them. You're engineering them, and sort of remixing and sending them off. And so you develop a whole new skill set, and that's not a bad thing. But the days when it's really a luxury, when you would just go into a studio and all you would do is just play. You would just perform. Producer would do his thing. Engineer would do his thing. We all know about that. And the upside is that it gives you more control, but it can be a black hole of time. I mean, I could spend way too much time in here and working on things and trying all kinds of different alternate versions that in the course of a session, they go, that's enough, move on. And that's a wonderful luxury, but you have to be the producer that says to the player guy, that's enough, that's good enough, we're going to move on. And so there's a lot of editing, mental editing that has to kind of go on. But wait, first let me get, what's this?
Product placement.
This has been in my studio for 15 years. You even make your water.
God, I wouldn't drink it if it's been there for 15 years.
Like 6 or 7 years ago, so it's fine now.
Okay, that's good.
But I thought, well, that's a testimony to the durability of DW products.
And the longevity maybe too. I had a shaking story. Alex Acuna called me several months ago and said he was doing a session, and a young producer wanted to know if he could bring out a vintage DW kit. And as soon as he said that, I thought, well, no, there can't be vintage DW kits. And I'm thinking, holy shit, yeah, he wants an 81. We're old enough to have vintage DW kits, everybody, and so I just have to accept that. It's a fact out there with the younger generation.
We're all, I mean,
yeah,
we're a little younger, you know. Thomas, you might be one of the youngest, and Curt, and
Right.
Gregg Augustine just turned 50. I'm 61. I'm too young for Medicare, too old for women to care.
Oh, hey, psh.
where's that? You got to do the Padum crash there. That's it. There you go.
That's pretty
That's your job.
You know, remember after some of the drum club things that we would have at Mancini's, where we'd have these, you know, wonderful, you know, everybody would show up and play for a benefit or whatever. Then we would go to Denny's. We used to joke about, you know, we were talking about, you know, gigs and everything we were doing. And we would joke about the fact that, you know, someday we might be sitting here talking about medication. And surely that's exactly.
That's such a joke now, huh?
Kind of came true, I'm afraid. But at least we're here to talk about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Turkey, you had a question. I thought before you guys could ask each other questions about projects that you had. You had one we talked about just before we went on. Trying to remember what that was. Or you were going to ask.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Burleigh, the song "Baby Come Back."
Oh yeah. Well, that's not me on that.
It's not.
No. That was a player.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh God.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
This whole time I thought it was you. See?
No. In fact, Ambrosia's, we're going to do an album of songs that people thought we did, but we didn't do.
That's great.
Then I guess my question is null. My question is null.
Yeah, no, but the drummer, I forget. I don't know I've played with Peter Beckett a lot, the voice of player. But yeah, I forget the drummer's name, but I thought he did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
What about "You're the Biggest Part of Me"? Same question.
Well, you know, that was heavily influenced by Freddie Gruber, because he taught me that kind of push pull on the you know, that exercise, you know, I don't know how to describe it, but you know, where I call it the push pull.
Yeah.
I did a session though after that song was a hit, and the producer didn't know who I was. I was just a drummer on the session, and he actually came out and said to me, you know, because he had the song, I had a similar feeling. He goes, you know, that song by Ambrosia, can you play that groove?
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I just said, I'll try.
Really, what year was that?
So that came out in 1980.
1980. Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But, you know, I want to tell you that I was so influenced by that thing Freddie Gruber showed me, that Ambrosia used to rehearse, like, you know, every day, and I wouldn't stop playing that groove. I just would not stop playing it. And we had all of a sudden we had 4 songs with that groove, because that's the only thing I would play.
There's nothing better. You're the biggest part of me. Make a wish, baby. Hold on down and make it come true. Make a list, baby. All the things I do for you. Have no risk now in letting my love rain down on you.
Hey, Chad Smith here. I'm at the Drum Channel. Huh!
Hi, I'm Don Lombardi. About 40 years ago, I started DW drums in my garage. During that whole period of time, I was lucky to get to know many of the greatest drummers and teachers of all time. Drum Channel is a unique opportunity for you to invest in your future, and we have made sure that it's worth it.
last time when we were together, we were talking tracks we like, and I had brought up this Carlos Vega track that he had done with James Taylor. I couldn't remember the name of it. And I want to ask you, Luis, because you may have played this with James or with Carlos. It's called First of May.
Yeah.
It was that wonderful example of Carlos playing this very laid back kind of Latin feel, but it was very on the backside. And as soon as they get to the breakdown, right before there's kind of like this weather report sort of section that I think it was Don Grombacher maybe was playing keyboards.
Probably Grombacher, yeah.
And it was and James, would sing along with this. I mean, it was quite an esoteric melody for James, but it was a great departure. And there's drums and percussion. I don't know on the record if Carlos was playing both, but if you did that with him, because that was one of those examples of playing like these styles. You think of Latin as being middle to the front, but Carlos was playing middle to the back, but it had this gravity to it. And I'll never forget that it was just like there's like a 4-bar section. And, if Don, maybe it can be pulled up without copyright, well, maybe with big copyright problems, I don't know. But if you had played that with him, do you recall doing that with him, or did you do it with Steve?
Yeah, fortunately, I got to play a lot with Carlos, man. But unfortunately, I never did a James Taylor gig with him.
Oh.
So I was never on it. But I'm going to tell you a thing that I heard about a Carlos thing, not relating to this song, because I never played it with Carlos. But there's a greatest hits album of James Taylor, greatest hits album, recorded live.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So one time, Jimmy Johnson's the bass player in the band, and we're in the back of the bus talking one day, and we're talking about Carlos, and Jimmy goes, and you know what, man? There's something you probably don't know. You know that live record we did? Okay. I wasn't there with Carlos and Grombacher and all the guys. He says, Carlos just always counted off the tunes. You know how sometimes we'll have like a little clicker so we know the tempo, so argument with the singer when he goes, "Hey, that was too slow." Hey, no, wait a minute, man. We rehearsed 120. Here it is, Yeah. So he never used any of that. He just counted shit off. And when they went to do all the edits for the record, you're taking, oh man, that verse be great from Cleveland, and the second verse from Alabama. They were perfectly in tempo.
Man, wow.
I couldn't believe it. I said, wow, really, man? I says, yeah. And this is before Pro Tools and shit. You can sit down. Unbelievable. They could edit everything. But I don't know how he played that. I just played it with God. It's a great tune to play, man.
Great. That's, all of us know about that, about, developing, that clock that's inside when you shut the click off, it's still kind of going. And it's, there was, I think of it like there's like gears of a Swiss watch, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller with the finer subdivisions. And one of those great illustrations, and this was also another like epiphany for me, was when I was studying with Bill back in high school in New York. And he would take me on sessions occasionally, and he took me to I think it was a Deodato session, and they were playing a very, very slow piece of music. There was no click, and he was playing a very open spare part, and his time was just so relaxing. He was playing just almost quarter notes on the hi-hat, occasional eights, and I don't know, it's probably 76, 80 beats per minute. It wasn't fast. And I said to him, because there was no click, how do you stay so resolute? And he said, I think of it, I think of it in very fine subdivisions, even when I'm playing something very example, we have all done this where the quarter note is, you're thinking, or that is. And he said, even if he's not playing that, that was always going around in his head as a subdivision. And then I said, well, conversely, when you're playing with Mahavishnu, they had this track called the Noonward Race, which was like about 180 BPM. And there was no way you could do that. And he said, oh, I just have this. So it's 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2. So he was always in this very kind of relaxed subdivision. And of course, the middle ground, where a lot of the tempos that we all are familiar with have their kind of natural subdivision, whether we're playing them or not. So I began thinking of time like a great big tractor wheel, and every spoke on the tractor represented a 16th note. And as it was going around, I would just kind of pull the notes off the tractor wheel, and that helped ingrain that sense of subdivision. And that's going back to your point, Luis, about Carlos, where Carlos just had this, wherever that came from, whether that was sort of some technique like that he was using, or or something else. When we all grew up without playing with clicks, and then the first time you play with the click, it's a revelation. Right. And I remember my first time, and it was on a jingle, and I was about 19, and I thought I could play pretty well, and everything was I knew. And the jingle, it was a 60-second jingle, and every 15 seconds, the feel changed, not the tempo. So it went from swing to rumba to rock to something else. And as soon as you would change styles, even at the same tempo, suddenly alter your the way you played. And I remember I went home and I started really practicing with a metronome after that, because I thought that's something that I need to be able to move between. Because a lot of times drummers would play before clicks. You would hear things and they would get to the fill would speed up a little bit, but it was natural. It breathed. And then we suddenly, all of us had to get used to the fact that the click is unforgiving, if that's the governor. And could I tell one more story, and then I'll shut up for a while? I received Dad at A&R in New York in the mid 70s, and I was in the other studio recording with the Dave Matthews Big Band. Remember them? Okay. And so I went in on a break and I was watching him, and they were soloing Steve's drums with the click. And they got to this section and there was like a 2-bar break. And it was a long triplet fill. He played against it and then brought the band back in. Now, the rest of the band were not using clicks. They were just relying on Steve. So he did this fill and he pulled it way back, so it really had some tension and gravity to it. But when he landed on the downbeat with the click, when it was soloed, he was noticeably behind. And it was, the rookie mistake that you can make the first time you play with the click is you think immediately when you get off, you've got to get right back, which is a big mistake. Over time, over about 4 bars, Steve just gradually got back with the track, and the rest of the band couldn't hear that. And I thought that was such a great way of relating to the time and not being locked into that subdivision. He was playing in and around that, and that was probably like 76. And it was a great illustration on how to use that without being a slave to it.
And first time I ever heard of thinking of the subdivisions, if you have to play something that's just like, I was doing a Claire Fisher session with 2+2, which is, it was this with the, it's our band and these 4 singers, and they had this one tune. The tune went so slow, man, like molasses. And all I had to play was, I had a temp, and it was just me, the whole intro, and these beautiful vocals and Claire's harmonies, of course. All I had to play was like this slow. Dun, 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 over and over. It might have been even slower than that. And there was no click. Claire never recorded with click, so I guess Claire it wasn't feeling just right. And he's the one, he said, listen, feel all the subdivisions in your head inside, feel the 16s, whatever you can hunker down to, and it'll all work out. That's the first time I ever thought of that. It was from Claire. And it's great, I do that sometimes, it helps.
Absolutely.
I would go around the horn. That's a good question to pass around, I think. Luis, also, an interview you did with us on Drum Channel, might have been with JR, but we brought up the subject of time, and you had mentioned it as an egg rolling down a hill. Do you remember that? That was a great definition. What's that again?
That thing about time, it was the difference between like, an American feel, whatever you call it, pop feel, or let's say a Brazilian feel or a Cuban feel. That's what we were talking about. It was about feel. So in a pop feel in our world out here, American music, whatever you want to call it, you take a ball and it's a ball, a round ball, and you put it on top of the hill and you let it roll, and the ball just goes and it rolls. The Latin feel, you get an egg and you get it to the top of the hill and you let it roll and it goes, because if you listen to Brazilian music, it's not a straight 16 thing, it all works out at the end, but it's got this little hump. And the Cubans do the same thing, and the Dominicans and all this. That's the kind of a way I kind of try to explain it.
That's a great analogy, man.
Great, isn't it?
Yeah.
JR, when we did the interview that was part of the Time Machine, your great DVD that's still available, and we talked to David Foster, and he said, depending on, schedules, he would use Jeff or you or Vinny. And of course, Quincy Jones, he mentioned you were his favorite drummer. When you talk about having time, like you mentioned Carlos, where he would be able to nail it in different countries without having a metronome as a reference, the opposite of that is equally tricky, as Don was saying. How do you play with a metronome and not make it feel like you're playing with a metronome? But what is your experience of tips you give?
Well, the click is your friend. That's one thing I've always noticed. And, but in a previous story, and let me tie this in, about Carlos, it was true with me with Rufus, is that you fall in love at one point with a particular style and the way you sound yourself. And so, for me, and maybe that was true with Carlos, he didn't need a click track because he was in love with those tempos. It was just part of who he was. So it didn't matter where he was. I mean, I remember with Rufus, and we would be in a whole nother year or something, but we're going to play this song again, and the tempos never went away. But I have to cut to the great Ray Charles, and I was fortunate to do his very last recording session, and we did a song that Elton John wrote called "Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest," and it was so sad. And his sister was hanging out, and we were at A&MA or Henson A. Well, we had a full orchestra and blah, blah, blah. And Ray wasn't there, and I forgot who the producer was, but he goes, Ray is just adamant about doing a take at 60 BPM. And I'm listening, I'm going, I'm listening to the band and the way the band's playing at 60, and I go, man, this shit feels just feel, how we'll all look and hear something and go, this feels back. Feels back, maybe. I go, let's cut one at 62. Let's cut one at 62. And so we cut another take at 62 BPM, and all of a sudden we go, Ray's coming. And Ray's daughter was there. And Ray comes in. Oh, no, it was, there was something about the day before. That was it. The day before. And he threatens the producer, and he says, you'd better cut this at 60 or else. And we're all looking at each other because we go, okay, yeah, we're going to do 62. Ray comes in the next day, goes, I'm not going to cuss anymore because I think I've sworn enough for the session. But Ray goes, "You better, man. Is this what I want?" And I looked at the guy and I go, "Get rid of the 62, but that's 60." And Ray goes, "Yeah, that's 60. That's 60 BPM." And that's the way it was. And that's what ended up on the record. And like, there's something to be said about that internal, like Doane, you're saying, that internal clock and how one feels stuff.
Thomas, when you produce your own projects, how do you look at approaching where you want to position the time? Or do you use a metronome?
Yeah, I play and I practice with metronomes all my life and without metronomes. And of course, I use click tracks mostly when I record or produce or, in the studio for sessions. But usually, I do something very similar. I usually count double time. When John was just talking about 60 BPM, I feel 60 as 120, and I feel like 120 pulse, but just play half time to it. I usually do that to be more precise with really slow tempos. 40 BPM, I'll feel 80 and just play the half time. And I do something similar when I play super fast. When we were talking about Billy Cobham playing at like 180 BPM. To me, that would be, I feel the tempo or the number that feels comfortable. I would feel 180 at 90, in a way, and just play 30-second notes, and similar, at 60 BPM, I would feel 120 because that way I can, I'm a lot more stable and steady and comfortable. And I'll just play half of the amount of notes, and that makes everything sit really well. And it also gives me the ability to be, to work on nuance more comfortably. If I want to lay it back a little bit or push it a little bit, I find it a lot easier when counting and feeling smaller subdivisions, and usually in my case, that's kind of a double time feel. So, if it's, 120, I would, feel one. Not the like the actual 2, 3, 4, but just 2, 3, 4. Just a halftime of it, and I think it's quite a natural thing to do for pretty much any musician to count. To count the smallest possible subdivision to make sure that everything's even and straight and accurate. And then. All I do is, I practice a lot of like tempo memorization exercises and things like that with like kinesthetic memory and if you have a song that you love, like whatever, Back in Black, you can't sing it wrong or too fast. It goes, that's 92 BPM. Okay. So you can, really nail tempos with association. And then if you work in some kinesthetic memory, some muscle memory, and you simply learn that by looking at the number on your metronome when you practice, then it becomes really easy to totally nail tempos. And then in order to just stay at that tempo and make it feel good, all you have to do is relax and not speed up. And a lot of drummers, I think, they have that tendency to speed up because after like 4 bars of playing a certain tempo, it becomes easier to play at that tempo and you kind of settle into that tempo. And when you have that sensation of like, suddenly it's easier, it feels, easier than you think. I must have slowed down because it's easier to play suddenly after 6, 8 bars or whatever. And then, or after 20 bars. And then a lot of drummers, I think, have that tendency to slightly speed up because they think they've slowed down. You know what I mean? So at least I've had that experience. So I just try to totally settle into the tempo, be relaxed about it, be cool about it. And yes, feel kind of a double time pulse, even when I'm playing only a halftime feel.
Could I ask a question for everyone to maybe go around, which to your point, Thomas, is do you use something physically, like a physical mechanism? And Gregg, I think you and I have talked about this at points where let's just say for me, I'm going to illustrate what I do. I'm interested in how everybody would find the subdivision. But if you're playing something slow and maybe you're playing it on the hi-hat with the hi-hat closed, I started developing that, like I would physically have the heel of my left foot was doing a 16th subdivision, and always kind of physically, as well as the clock that I was trying to get connected to in my head as well, be the thing that was also giving me that physical anchor. Everybody does it differently, but I'm curious if everybody has some method of how.
Bringing in that hi-hat might be an interesting one, because I think a lot of young drummers don't understand how drummers will use their hi-hat, not as a physical instrument in terms of what you're playing, but what you're saying, Doane, the momentum you have with your foot. Burleigh, maybe the idea of where you put the time, because it's so relaxed, but yet you still get there and it feels really good.
Takes me a little longer as I get older, yes, but yeah.
No, I mean, you have such a great time feel, as you all do, which is one of the big lessons I think everybody should take away here. But how do you think? Do you have a conscious way of subdividing it? And then the question that Doane asked too.
Well, if I have any second of doubt before starting the tune, I always sing the vocal, and if I feel comfortable singing the vocal, then I'm usually probably pretty close, to what the feel should be. So that's. But I relate to what Doane said. I've had bass players standing to my left playing, and they're going, "Man, you know what you're doing with your left foot?" And they say, like, I'll be doing some kind of wacky rhythm that I'm not even. I mean, with my heel bouncing all over the place, that I'm not even aware I'm doing. But I guess I'm subdividing something with my left foot to keep everything else intact,
Greg, do you feel you're doing that with? I mean, Greg is doing it with the Gregg Bissonette tambourine pedal, by the way. If I can throw a shameless plug there. She's got several things you can do with the
tambourine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Don and I came up with a tambourine pedal. You just play 8 notes with your left foot on the hi-hat, but you move it over and you're all of a sudden shaking a tambourine on 8 notes.
I gotta check that out, man.
If you pull up a little bit, you could get 16th notes. I remember the first time I used it about 8 years ago with Ringo. He's looking around because our sax player sometimes plays tambourine, and when he goes out front, he plays tambourine, and he's looking around. He goes, "Oh, it's you with your foot." But I agree with everything everybody said. I can relate, as I'm sure the drummers watching this can relate to everything that JR said. The click is your friend. The click has to be your friend. And what Doane said about the left foot moving. And my thing, when I was probably, 14 years old, playing in my dad's band back in Detroit, I started realizing upright bass, tenor sax, and drums, and the accordion player, his tempo just would go up and down and up and down. So as a young kid, I started kind of knocking my teeth together. And I started doing that in jazz band in high school. If the sax players, they think it's real cool, there's and you're going, and you're kind of gnashing your teeth, click, click, click. And then I was playing in a band in college, and it was the same kind of thing. I always wanted to, for some stupid reason, I went to subdividing 8 notes, 16 notes with my teeth. Well, I think it was about 26, I got the gig with David Lee Roth, and I went to this dentist, and he goes, "Man, what is going on with your teeth?"
Oh, shit.
"What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm a drummer." And he looked at my teeth, and they were so, and still are so worn down. He goes, "Man, when you play, Justin Turner on the Dodgers, he has that mouth guard. He wears that mouth guard. A lot of pro ball players wear mouth guards." And so I started wearing a mouth guard. And I think since I was about 26, I've stopped the damage. But that is not a good thing. We can all internalize. Sometimes I'd be singing on a song, and if the guitar player was Russian, I would go, and like uttering with my throat, and I would lose my voice. I said, I only sang lead on like one song. I sang backgrounds on 5 songs, this whole 4-hour set. What the heck's going on? I was grunting the whole time to try to internalize the subdivision. So I stopped grunting. I stopped grinding my teeth, and I'm just kind of doing this new thing. I used to play trumpet in high school. So I put my tongue on the roof of my mouth, and I would do this. And that doesn't hurt anything. You're just kind of clicking. If it's like 1, 2. And I would internalize that way, because young drummers, be careful that you don't grind your teeth down or lose your voice.
There's a hot tip for sure. A good friend of all of ours, who is actually one of the first people that called me for the Orange County Drummers, by the way, is John Ferraro, who we all know. And one of the hardest things I used to tell students to do is what he was doing when he was with Rod Stewart, where it was a brutally slow ballad at triple forte. And there's enough room in between 2 and 4 to drive a truck through it. But you all agree, playing really slow and loud, it seems like to young drummers, well, that's real easy because I can do that. That's one of the harder things to do, I think.
That is the hardest thing to do, though, playing slow and quietly.
Yes.
To really be deliberate. Now, that is something we can all learn from, because you're young, you've got a lot of testosterone, whatever you got, and it's you tend to want to play everything too quick and play all the stuff but to break that down, to play the slowest thing you can at that intense committed level. I've seen some people do that. You know who does that really well is Jimmy Brandley. He can play really quietly and really burn, and very slowly. And I mean, we've all had to learn to do that. But I remember, Luis, I think you play with him. You probably all have worked with him
a lot, yeah.
And he's just, that's touch. As you get older, you tend to play a little bit quieter, and that helps. And in-ears have helped with drummers not overplaying, because you really hear the transient of the notes that you're playing, and then to be able to bring that more resolute performance to something without the adrenaline of doing a live kicking in, but still keeping it at that, burning intensity. Some people are great at playing really fast and very quietly. That's also equally hard.
John,
I was going to give props to Freddie White, is because, all of us listen to the Earth, Wind and Fire Bible, and there is when I play with David, there's tempos below 60. I, honest to God, now in my professional brain, eliminate every single fucking note there is. I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to hear any subdivisions. What I want to know is where whenever one is happening, nothing can dispute that. And wherever if I'm going to put a 2 or a 4 or whatever in between, or nothing, it's okay. As long as when you get to that next bar, 1 is correct. So that's one thing that I kind of took from Freddie White, listening to Earth, Wind and Fire.
You should change "Can't Hide Love" to "Can't Hide One."
Hey. You all find yourself on the hi-hat. Do you find yourself doing subdivisions with your heel? When I was doing a course in working with Chad Smith, I wanted to bring up the fact that, yes, he was showing you how to play basic rock beats, but at the same time, there was a feel that he had about the way he played those rock beats, is why he probably got that gig. So I said at one point when we were in the middle of filming, I say something about the fact that every time you play, whatever you're doing, you're always moving your hi-hat heel in eighth notes. Whether you're playing it on 2 and 4 or playing quarter notes, but your heel is always going on eighth notes. And he looked down and said, I've never noticed that before.
Yeah.
It was just like it's intuitive. It's built into you. It's just what you were talking about earlier. The body motion is such an important part of what you're doing and playing. But also one other story. When I interviewed Jimmy Cobb, we were onto the same subject, and I've told this before, and some of you may have heard it. But the question was playing really slow, and he was talking about brushes, where you would make the circle. Brushes, by the way, another whole world out there for drummers to learn about that we can talk about. But he said, yeah, I said, because I know Sarah Vaughan, when he was with the Sarah Vaughan Trio, Sarah did some really slow tempos. And he said, yeah, but he said, no, Don, Sarah Vaughan did slow ones, but Dinah Washington, he said that if you want to talk slow, where I could never get the circle to go slow enough, he said the top of the chart said quarter note equals August.
Wow.
I thought that was one of the best lines I've ever heard, right? That's what I call slow. But Kirky, your experience with all the people you played with, and a lot of the foreign superstars that you played with over there, I know some of those tempos I'm sure are really slow. There are a lot of ballads, right?
A ton of ballads. And what's crazy is the way they write their pop music. It's like 5,000 bars of a verse and 1 bar of a chorus, and then the song is over. So it's like, at what point does this go somewhere? But, it's like every style of music, like, what you're saying, Luis, about the egg and the ball, it's just really the approach and how you're going after it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Johnny Halliday, he, for all intents and purposes, he was the French Elvis Presley, the French boss. He was the top rocker of France, and he liked everything fast. So, and, fast meant energetic, which isn't always necessarily the case. Fast is just a train wreck waiting to happen, as we all know. When the singer looks back at you, faster, you're like, no, it's gonna crash. Just back there shaking your head, going, God, I hate you. Hate you. You have LSD, lead singer disease. Anyway.
Hey, Augustine, what we're hearing from all these guys, what do you think the most important takeaway would be, and how you've applied that in your playing, in your career also?
Well, Thomas really defined me. I speed everything up. I need a click track if we're recording, but it's a battle. I have to be really aware, and I have to be deliberate to try to stay on point with that tempo. And I battled that forever. And it's interesting. I don't have the subdivisions. I don't think. Maybe a little bit with my head. I don't think I do though. So I think it's just something in my head, just having that internal timepiece, the metronome telling me to stay on course. But it's definitely a battle. I've played rock music since the beginning. My early influences being, Bonham and then a little bit later, Stuart Copeland, some of these guys trying to emulate what they were doing, and some of the early, really, really heavier, rock music, where it was faster anyway. The Iron Maidens with Clive Burr, Nickelback Brain. Some of these guys they're amazing players, and just trying to emulate that, and my brain would automatically. I'm taking away something from everybody here for sure.
I remember the great Will Lee, bass player, talking about Steve Jordan and the way he played, especially during the Letterman years. And what he said was, Steve Jordan understands the actual value of a quarter note. I thought about that, and it was like, all of my hero drummers that are on this panel right now, you guys really mastered the value of a quarter note. And that value adds to the groove. That groove adds to the music. And the music becomes what it is. So, I mean, my suggestion to all you young drummers out there is learn the values, the actual values of the notes that you're playing. Because we all want to rush. We all want to lay back. We get excited, but if we understand the value of an actual quarter note or eighth note, it's a win-win.
And I think, going by what Curt just said and what JR just said about one being so important, I think the one note that sort of gets cheated the most is 4. And I remember in the 80s watching a Dave Weckl video, and he was really, Dave's got amazing time. His influences, Steve Gadd and the stuff he's done on his own. He said so many drummers he goes and hears, especially when you're out doing clinics and you're listening to younger drummers play. 1 and 2 and 3 can be great, but usually there's some kind of angst, whether it's testosterone or just excitement or whatever. They tend to cheat the 4. And younger drummers especially need to remember that it's 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and 4 E and a 1, not 4 E and a 1. You got to make sure that you don't cheat 4. And JR, that's exactly what you said about 1. 1's got to be boom.
I have the opposite story of this, which may not have anything to do with it. Everybody knows Andre Fisher, right?
Sure.
And I joined and kind of replaced him, and Moon was there for a sec. But
yeah.
Andre hired me to do some sessions, and I don't know if it was Brenda Russell or somebody. And Andre goes, "Man, your fills, they're too perfect. I want you to play a drum fill that's like it sounds like you falling down the steps." And I'm going, what? So all of us training. We're training to make, whatever. It's like, or whatever. And he just wanted me to go,
wow.
So I'm sorry, I can't play like you, Andre.
Wow.
I don't know why I thought that, but they're talking about fucking 4 up. There you go.
Wow, man. That's a great Fisher.
I never.
The other exact same thing, and this is important for drummers to know. I think how much it is all part of your psyche and just your personalities and your being, your time field. When I was doing those lessons with Chad, at one point, he was just doing 16th note fills around the snare drum and the toms. And I said, a problem young drummers have is when they start moving around the drum set, they'll leave a little bit of space. They won't keep them even. It'll be da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I said, if you do it the wrong way for a second, and then they'll hear the difference between that. And we did 4 takes and I gave up. I just said, well, do it again, but leave a little space. Now do it again, but do it so they're uneven. It was impossible to do. He couldn't hear it that way. He couldn't play it that way. It was going to be even no matter what.
Because his dad was a band director, Chuck Wackerman. He was ingrained in him.
Oh, this is Chad Smith I'm talking about.
Chad Smith. Oh,
yeah, right. Chad Wackerman would know how to do it both ways, I'm sure, because he's taught a teacher all of his life. What about rushing, though? I mean, a lot of the songs I grew up listening to, jazz records especially, Milestones, the early the early Miles Davis tunes, and I think when we were at David's house, Foster's house, doing the interview, he asked me some questions, and he was a piano player, I guess, on some of those Earth, Wind, and Fire. And he said one of them really sped up, and he went into the control room, and they said, "No, it feels good." But,
Maurice shut him down. And he goes, "Man, where's the time? How come the time's not perfect all the way to the end?" I mean, all of us have headhunters, right?
Yeah.
I was like, and I still question the stamp that Harvey left on all of us.
Yeah.
By playing those songs, and when they start here and end up there, I still question it. But in reality, that's one of my 10 favorite records of all time.
Absolutely.
There's something to be said about that.
I'm anti-click these days. Whenever I work for a client, I always try to push them to record without a click. But because technology has taken over, it's always with a click. But sometimes I could talk them into doing one without. And every time they choose the one without the click because everyone's being human and it all moves together. And it's like all of our favorite records from growing up, they speed up or slow down, but it's the emotion, it's the feeling.
Well, you know what? The late, God bless Bruce Swedien, he used to say, we're only using the click track, because I question him, for me to edit later.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, am I buying into that or not? So I realized that he just did do a lot of cuts. In the old days, remember we'd have to put islands in the 2-inch tape?
Yeah.
You guys remember that, but
yeah.
That was kind of, the engineer's life is on he's going to get executed if he screws up.
I think part of what as humans we fall in love with a piece of music. I think a lot of it is we fall in love with the imperfections of it, the human part of it. And I think that's what kind of touches us, something in our heart or psyche. And because if it was all perfect, I mean, you know, a lot of times today, you know, compositions or bands, they've been tweaked by the producer and the engineer to be perfect. But you know, it's like I hear some of these songs and I'm impressed, but I'm not in love. I don't fall in love. I've heard it. I don't need to hear it again. But I hear Aretha and I've got to hear it 100 times. You know, it's like, because it's not perfect, it's just pure.
Yeah. Hey, JR, what about Off the Wall with Michael Jackson? Was that click or no click?
All click. And actually I programmed all 10 tunes, but I had a 7-frame film click I used for that.
Yeah,
I only had certain options, and that would be what it was.
Like a Yuri?
Huh? Yes.
A Yuri timeline click?
Yeah, like that stupid box, and if you hooked it, it would buzz and shit. And
yeah, a Yuri click. Alan Sides, yeah.
I hated those things. It always made me feel like someone was sticking a screwdriver in my ear.
It was
all with you
that. That's what we wanted, you know. But you know, I learned at Berkeley, you know, in '73 and '4, though, and that's why it is your friend. But you know, let's just assume they're doing it for editing purposes.
Yeah.
Who's to say that we don't need a little policing in popular music? So I would take it and jack the living shit out of it.
Yeah.
I would be playing with Louis Johnson. And between he and I's the time, we could never hear the click.
Huh.
It was loud. I mean, that click was running at 90 dB, I would assume. And we're blowing out AKG phones constantly. And he and I would look at each other, and we were like almost crying. He goes, "Did you lose the click?" I go, "Yeah, I don't know where the hell it was." And the talkback goes down, goes, "You guys were perfect." Blah 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 blah.
Was that at Westlake on Santa Monica? Where was that?
Yeah, it was early Westlake.
Yeah, man.
Hey, have you guys ever done this? Speaking about the click and JR saying the click is your friend, is our friend. The first time first time actually. There's a tune in one of these tours with James, and the production started getting more elaborate, and you know it's a film now and all this other bullshit, and now you have to have this one song has to be on with the click. We never play with the click, but this one has to be because of the whatever the thing that's happening back here. So Gad's got a click, and I said, well, might as well, you know, feed me the click too, you know. And Gad uses the click as an instrument, so the click's going, he goes 1, 2, 3, 4. It's up, and I go, and at first I'm going like, oh, wait a minute, you know, and finally I told him to take the click off you know, I don't need to listen to that now. I just follow Gad, and I was I said, yeah, man, you know, that way, you know, you just play with the thing, and it's like, you know, if it's like another percussionist or another drummer there, it's just playing a beat.
Right.
That's great.
That's your friend right there.
Yeah.
Film scenes all changing a beat late?
Huh?
Were the film scenes all changing a beat late?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I never looked back there. Nobody complained. It worked out. That's how he uses it when he has to.
Like finger snaps.
Yeah, so it's just like the upbeat. So the click, instead of being the quarter note, you know.
Yeah.
I have a question. Well, actually, I have 2 questions for you, but we were talking in the last week about where everybody likes to put their playing in relation to the click. And you know, Gregg says, well, his is more, you know, kind of to the middle, and you were talking about working with Louis Johnson and Quincy, where you would bury the click, you would hear it. Are there times though where you would you knew to kind of give it the tension that you needed, unless you're actually programming, say, a verse at one tempo, chorus at a different tempo, bridge at a different tempo, the way you would naturally breathe, would you find ways where you would sit in different parts of the click relative to the silent energy, or did you always try to stay kind of dead with it and bury it?
Or I guess that's related to me, but what I found was from 78 on, when I moved to Los Angeles, and I used to play with Stephen Stills a lot, so there was some really lax time going on. But, because of the music, everything seemed to be there. However, we had nothing but respect for what Jeff Bisquera was saying. And in my opinion, the downbeat of where your kick drum is in North American music is God. And whatever you bring your left hand back, whether how many milliseconds or what, tends to then alter the feel of the groove. And so that's how I do it. So if you have 8 notes, number 1, if you're just playing number 1 in the kick drum, and you're playing 2 and 4 in the snare drum, and you want to lay back 4 milliseconds, that leaves your other notes on your hi-hat that you have to almost make a hump out of to make them sound equal. So in other words, you're dragging certain notes and then maybe possibly rushing certain notes. So the whole key is to try to create a groove that works with you laying it back. And, Jeff did that so masterfully, where he could play the downbeats seemed to be really solid, but he would play the stuff around the meat and potatoes were laid back, so it made the track feel good. It made the guitar player not rush,
What a great analogy, yeah.
That is it. Yes.
Harlow master at that as
Yeah,
well.
that's right. That's absolutely right.
Well, I'll tell you something. For me, for my own experience playing with Jeff and with Steve Jordan, with those two guys, I've done sessions with them, and I don't listen to the click.
Right.
No need.
Yeah, no need.
With them, because they do all this stuff like you're talking about.
I've got a great story that Abe Sr. told about Jeff in the studio, since we put a montage together of Jeff's stories from our last get-together, and we'll do that from our get-together here too. But let's listen to what Abe Sr. had to say for one quick second.
We were recording with Jay Graydon, and the drummer was Jeff Porcaro. We were doing records for Al Jarreau, and everything was always cut to the click. And Jay Graydon says to Jeff, Jeff, I don't know how you do this, but certain parts of the song are with the click, and other parts are behind, and other parts are ahead. How can you do that, And Jeff says to Jay, if you want me to be with the click, then don't hire anybody else. Because I'm always going to go with the music. Is that a great answer,
Hey, Chad Smith here. I'm at the Drum Channel. Huh!
Hi, I'm Don Lombardi. About 40 years ago, I started DW drums in my garage. During that whole period of time, I was lucky to get to know many of the greatest drummers and teachers of all time. Drum Channel is a unique opportunity for you to invest in your future, and we have made sure that it's worth it.
So that was a great comment from Abe, I think, about Jeff. I mean, that kind of sums up everything that you guys are saying. Burleigh, you had talking about Jeff a little bit earlier.
Oh, I have one specific memory he was several memories of him, but once we were playing a festival, and Ambrosia was on the festival with Toto, and it was the first time I met him, and he came in our trailer, and I was gushing praise and all that, and he said something really interesting. He goes, you know what, man? He goes, guys like you, you're in a band, you guys are, you're in this band, and bands develop styles. Styles come out of bands. And he goes, and guys like me, he's talking about himself, he goes, guys like me, we hear bands like you, and drummers that develop band styles, and we take from you. We pick your we're influenced by what the styles and the feels that you guys come up with in bands, and we take that and put it on commercial records.
That's so cool.
Like
Man.
it was like really like wow, it validated what I was doing.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
Hal Blaine used to talk about that. He used to say, all the suit and tie recording session players, they would always make fun of the Beatles and the Stones and the Small Faces. And he embraced it so much. He said, I wanted Hal Blaine, an amazing, amazing drummer on all these hit songs. He said, I wanted to learn to play like Ringo. I got a lot of vibe out of listening and watching Ringo play. So he was a student. Sounds like Jeff was a student of yours, Burleigh.
Well, I mean, it was a nice compliment, but yeah, I mean, you think about it. You think about guys like Levon Helm and
oh yeah,
like that. Just the vocabulary they developed, in their fields.
Yeah, Levon, looking at him play was an interesting thing, but boy, when you listened, I mean, that record, my sister told me to buy that album, and I went and bought it. I go, oh my God, this is the greatest ever,
And he's singing as well.
Yeah.
But that's part of why he played in that incredibly musical way, because he got out of the way of the singer himself. And drums, we have this instrument that requires 4-way independence and sometimes 5-way if you're singing simultaneously. And a lot of times we're taught, to sing a pulse, or to, just to always be singing the quarter note, whatever, against whatever you're playing, which gives you not only the independence, but the necessary subdivision. And I think that's, in a way, one of the things that connects all of us. We've all experienced the fraternity of drums and drummers and percussionists, very unique amongst all instrumentalists, because each of us know when we watch the other play, we know what it took to get there. We know what it took to develop that. And it's a subtle art that, a lot of times every singer will go, well, I can play the drum. You can sit down and they can play a simple thing. But as we know, drums gets complicated very quickly right after that. And so we have this ability to support and not only see what each other's playing, but we share it, that is something I've rarely seen with other instrumentalists, because I think it's the appreciation that we have for what it took to do that. And that's something that, Greg, we were talking about trying to dispel the notion that the Woodland Hills Drum Club, which is now more the Thousand Oaks Drum Club, it's not zip codes. Everybody that we know that plays the drum are part of this, this worldwide community, because you can go up to almost any drummer and say, how do you do that? And they'll be delighted to show you and break it down and talk about the finer points of that. Where,
like guitar players, when you ask them, they're like, nope.
Right.
Show you. I'm not showing you.
Right. Speaking of Burleigh Drummond, and speaking of Levon Helm, and speaking of Thousand Oaks, in Westlake Village for Westlake Elementary School, I got to play some double drums with Burleigh, but I heard Burleigh not only play the weight, but sing the weight like Levon and play it at the same time. You remember that, Burleigh?
I do, yeah. Well, I mean, he's a huge influence, without a doubt, yeah.
You nailed it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I have to say a thing. I think Freddie Gruber said this to me once about the feel, and it was basically whether it was jazz or pop or whatever. He says, if the singer's happy, the drummer is doing his job. And he said if the trumpet player or the sax player is feeling that melody that he's playing, the drummer's doing his job. But he said that's the connection. The melody.
Let's see if the singer's signing the check.
Yeah.
Along with a few other choice things I'm sure Freddie said that we could share, but that's a whole show unto itself.
Yeah.
I think what you said kind of to capsulize it, if you were all to sit down and play the same pattern, it's going to sound different. That's why there's no competition amongst drummers. I mean, it is always sharing. I think maybe it was Greg. I was at a PAS show. I think it was you, Greg. Maybe we're going up the escalator. You do this on that. As he was passing you on the escalator, he was showing. Do you remember that? He was showing.
Absolutely, Don. Absolutely. Vinny had just played this thing with his right hand like this on the floor tom with his double pedal, and he went. He was going up the escalator, and we were going down, and we yelled, "Vinny, what the heck was that? Were you playing right hand, right foot, left hand, left foot?" And he's going away, and he's smoking a cigarette while he's going, "No, it's right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot."
That's funny. I was at a NAMM show, and I saw Vinny walk up to Keltner, and it's like right after Josie had come out, and he's going, and Keltner does that one fill in Josie, and Vinny was cornering him like, "Show me what you did." So
wow, he's a student, man.
Yeah, talking about playing on the beat, the downbeat, or on 4. Beats in general, we had a little bit of a chart we did a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't have everybody's name in it, so we've kind of changed it a little bit, and we can't all play it together because the latency would be all over the place. So Greg's kind of going to be the guy that's going to lead us through this, but this is a little ode to the new Thousand Oaks Drum Club here. Put that up on the screen for us, and we'll check it out, and we'll go through it once with you, and then we'll go through and sing it.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Bissonette, Curt Bisquera, Thomas Lang, Luis Conte, Doane Perry, Burleigh Drummond, Lenny Castro, J.R. Robinson, Myron Grombacher, Mark Cranny, Don Lombardi, the Thousand Oaks Drum Club.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a Don Lombardi composition.
Actually, and Adam Coons, I got to give him props for doing that. Go ahead and play it out for us, Greg, on the snare drum there.
Yeah.
Say that again?
Play it out for us on the snare drum here.
Okay. 1, 2. Oh, 1, 2. Gregg Bissonette, Curt Bisquera, Thomas Lang, Luis Conte, Doane Perry, Burleigh Drummond, Lenny Castro, J.R. Robinson, Myron Grombacher, Mark Cranny, Don Lombardi, the Thousand Oaks Drum Club.
Everybody play it and send it to us, whoever it can.
Do me a favor and
$10.99?
Yeah, we'll email it to everybody.
email it to everybody.
Yeah.
You want it on snare drum?
Have Jenny do that. Anywhere you want, and then we'll lock it all. Pick a. You guys are all talking about how you play perfectly with a click track. Let's see you do it here. We'll pick a tempo.
Definitely faster. So what about 130?
130.
130. Okay.
Man, you imagine the royalties on this. This is going to be a mofo.
I know, man.
Gotta figure something to monetize all this stuff.
Bye.
Thinking of ways to do it. Also,
Can special payments get involved?
The union, our friend.
Also, thinking of friends, I mean, the whole idea is next time we get together, think of some friends you want to invite that we could roast.
Do they have to live in Ventura County only?
Oh, no, we could bring anybody in from anywhere. So just think of
Toss in here and
yeah. Send me a list of whoever you might want, everybody, and we'll run them down. A couple. Yeah, I was going to do him. Yeah. Well, we got to do him and give him some heat because he moved out of Thousand Oaks.
He did. He's a defector.
Anybody that moved out is going to.
Where did he defect to? Where did he go?
Nashville or Vegas.
Oh.
Vegas, yeah.
Vegas. Yeah.
Vegas, yeah.
Wages.
The other guy on my list would be funny. Zigaboo. He just moved to Vegas.
Did he?
Yeah. So we're going to have the drummers in Vegas too. So we got Orange County, Texas, and Vegas. So look out. But this will be a lot of fun. Yeah. Mentioning about how you would each affect a song, something that it just brought to my attention. We're going to have to actually put it up as a course. But years ago, Gannon Arnold came in and we re-recorded one of the CDs that he did, and he used various drummers on it. So I said, well, while you're doing that, let's make a drum project out of it. On his project, he had Taylor Hawkins, Jimmy Chamberlain, Simon Phillips, Terry, and Gary Novak. I said, let's
Didn't
pick.
get anybody good.
So I said, if you're going to reproduce this again and want to get video out of it, let's pick one song, and they haven't heard the other drummer play it, and have each one of them play it. So there was one song, one of his songs, Not From Here. So you've got 5 different guys playing one song that makes the song sound 5 different ways. And the story I tell when I pass this on is that it reminds me of like when David Foster was saying, you know, he would use you as much as he could, JR, because he knew exactly how you were going to make that sound feel. It was going to sound different than if another drummer played it, and he knew what you brought to it, and that's why he hired you. Same with all of you. I mean, the reason why, you know, you guys don't get hired and are told to make it sound like somebody else. Well, in some cases Burleigh does, but they want it to sound like Burleigh. So you're okay there. Actually, that was a good story too. So it's a fun one anyway. It's the impact that a drummer has, and the fact that I think that the instrument is so unique. There's so many different genres, different than playing trumpet, saxophone, or any other instrument. I think because it's, you know, the embodiment of the instrument is the way you use your bodies and just what you're talking about, the way it feels and the way you sing. And you said something really cool. Had a long conversation this morning with Efren Toro about dance, Curt. About, you know, the songs all have to do with movement and rhythm and dance, be it whatever it might be, type of genre. So any closing thoughts you guys all have?
Well, in the words of the great Hal Blaine, I've got a session at 1, and if I'm late, my therapist will kill me.
I also talked to Greg the other day as he was driving to the studio. One of Hal Blaine's biggest problems of a studio drummer, which, remember what that was, Greg?
Finding a place to park.
Yeah, that was right. So
Yeah.
Bingo.
once you did that, any other closing thoughts from anybody? And we'll decide when we're going to do this again and bring some other some guests on.
You make the call, and it was a pleasure seeing everybody during, you know, these weird times. And happy holidays.
Yeah. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah. Clicky maka, everybody.
Come on, Curt.
Behind you.
Hey, Curt, you got to put the Hawaiian background, and we'll sing.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah, man, you gotta get the background.
Yeah, wait a minute. Hold on.
Background is the shit.
I need a Mai Tai. Hurry.
Here we go.
1, 2, 3.
Come on, damn it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. What am I?
Go. Often is the wall. I know it's time to go now. Too much. We'll see you guys later.
All right.
Love you.